My name is Camille Foster. I am 36 years old. I am a licensed clinical social worker at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, which means that I have spent the last 12 years of my professional life inside hospitals. Not as a patient, not as a nurse, not as a doctor, as the person you call when a family is falling apart in the waiting room, when someone needs to be told something no one else knows how to say, when a discharge plan requires a family to function as a unit and the family has never been a unit, and you have 4 hours to figure out how to make it work anyway. I know hospitals. I know what they smell like at 3 in the morning, and what they sound like, and what the particular silence of an ICU waiting feels like midnight when you are the only person in it. I know what it looks like when a family shows up, and what it looks like when they don't. I have sat across from hundreds of families in crisis, and I have learned to read quickly and without flinching what is actually happening underneath people say is happening. I thought this prepared me. I thought that 12 years of that work had given me a kind of inoculation, that I had seen enough human failure and human love and human cowardice that nothing in my own family could blindside me. I was wrong about that. My mother, Beverly Foster, was admitted to Piedmont Atlanta Hospital on a Tuesday in February. She had collapsed at her kitchen sink while washing the dinner dishes. A stroke, the kind that comes without warning, the kind that rewrites everything in the time it takes to fall. She was 63 years old. She was, before that Tuesday, a woman who walked 3 miles every morning through her neighborhood in Decatur and made soup from scratch on Sundays and called her children on Wednesday evenings because Wednesday, she had always said, was the loneliest day of the week and the best day to reach out. She was in the ICU for 7 days. She was in a step-down unit for 4 more after that. 11 days in total. From the Tuesday she was admitted to the Thursday she was discharged to a rehabilitation facility. 11 days during which the trajectory of her recovery was uncertain enough that every morning felt like a negotiation and every evening felt like grace. I was there for all 11 days. My brother Derek was there for the first one. I need to take you back to before the hospital, to Atlanta and to Decatur, and to the specific shape of what it meant to grow up as Camille Foster, the younger sister of Derek Foster, the daughter of Beverly Foster, in a family that was, by any measure that matters, a good one. The Foster family home was a brick ranch house on Glenwood Avenue in Decatur, the kind of house that had been in the neighborhood long enough to have become part of it, where the neighbors knew your car and the kids from the block had been in and out of your backyard since they were old enough to open a gate. My parents, Beverly and Raymond Foster, had bought the house the year was born and had raised us both inside its walls, inside its rhythms, inside the specific culture of a family that was warm and functional and rooted in the kind of love that showed up. The practical kind, the present kind, the kind that makes dinner and goes to games and sits with you when things go sideways. My father, Raymond, was a high school football coach for 22 years at Decatur High School. He was a large, quiet man who expressed love through action rather than words. He fixed things, he drove people places, he showed up early and stayed late and never made a production of any of it. He died of prostate cancer when I was 24 and Derek was 28, after a 2-year illness that he navigated with a quietness that was characteristic of him, and that I found, at the time, both admirable and heartbreaking. He was 56 years old. My mother, Beverly, was the center of our household, in the way that certain women are the centers of certain families, not because she demanded it, but because she had the quality of a person who knows how to hold things together without making it look like effort. She was a middle school science teacher for 30 years. She had strong opinions about nutrition and weak opinions about punctuality, and a laugh that could fill a room, and a way of looking at you when you were struggling that made you feel simultaneously seen and capable. She was, and is, the kind of mother you call on a Wednesday, because Wednesday is the loneliest day of the week. Derek is 4 years older than me. We were never the kind of siblings who were best friends. He was a high school athlete who ran track and dominated every room he entered, loud and social and easy. And I was the younger sister who read constantly and observed everything and was more comfortable in one-on-one conversation than in group set. But we were close in the way that siblings are close when they have been things together. Our father's illness, the years of recalibrating as a family of 3, we knew each other, we trusted each other. Or I thought we did. I moved back to Atlanta after graduate school, which was a deliberate choice. My mother was alone after my father died, and though she was entirely capable and had no need of being taken care of, I wanted to be near. I bought a condo in Inman Park, 12 minutes from her house in Decatur, and we fell into an easy rhythm: Sunday dinners, Wednesday calls, occasion nights when one of us just needed company. I knew hers. I knew her doctor's name. I knew where she kept her important documents and who her emergency contacts were and what medication she took in the morning and what she took at night. I knew all of this because I had been paying attention for years. Not because anyone asked me to, because she was my mother and she was alone, and paying attention to the people you love is not a burden. Derek moved to Marietta 6 years ago, which is about 40 minutes from Decatur on a good traffic day and an hour and 20 on a bad one. He has a good job in corporate finance and a house with a 2-car garage and a yard with a gas grill he is very proud of. He calls our mother on her birthday and at Christmas and occasionally in between when he has good news to share. He does not call on Wednesdays. Patricia Siemens became Patricia Foster 4 years ago at a garden wedding in Marietta that was beautiful and well organized, and at which I was a bridesmaid. Lavender dress, dyed to match shoes, the whole thing. Because Derek asked me to be, and because I genuinely wanted to celebrate my brother's marriage. I want to be precise about my early impressions of Patricia, because I think precision matters here, and because I am aware that this is a story in which she is the antagonist and I am the narrator, and those two things together create a risk of caricature that I want to actively resist. So, Patricia is 37 years old. She works in pharmaceutical sales, which means she is skilled at presentation, persuasion, and identifying what a person needs to hear in order to make a decision. She is trim and well-dressed and has the kind of social ease that comes from years of professional networking. She can make anyone feel, within the first 5 minutes of meeting them, that she is genuinely interested in them specifically. She remembered, at every family gathering in the first 2 years, exactly what everyone had the last time she'd seen them, and asked follow-up questions that demonstrated she had been paying attention. She was good at all of the right things, and she was, specifically, good at them in front of people who were watching. What I noticed, and I noticed it early, probably within the first year of their relationship, a different quality to Patricia's manner when the audience was smaller. When it was just her and Derek and me at dinner, without my mother present or other family member present, she was cooler. Not rude, not obviously hostile. Less interested, less warm. The questions didn't come, the follow-ups didn't happen. I told myself this was simply the difference between social performance and private comfort. Most people are different in groups than one-on-one. I told myself it meant nothing. The first concrete indication that it meant something was a conversation Derek and I had about 18 months into his marriage. We were on the phone, a rare thing, since we didn't talk as regularly as I talked to our mother. And he mentioned that Patricia had found our Sunday dinners at Mom's house a little intense. I asked what intense meant. He said she felt like there were expectations, that it was hard to feel relaxed, that she sometimes felt like an outsider at family gatherings. I said, "I'm sorry she feels that way. What can we do to make her feel more included?" He said, "I think might start skipping some Sundays, just to give her a break from it." They began skipping some Sundays, then most Sundays, then all of them. I noticed that my mother, who had never said a critical word about Patricia in my presence, had stopped mentioning her by name in conversation. When I asked about Derek, she would say Derek is fine with the specific brevity of someone who has learned to keep something short. I did not push her on it. I filed it away. The second concrete occasion was a dinner, about 2.5 years into the marriage, that my mother organized specifically to see Derek, who had been increasingly difficult to schedule. She made his favorite meal, she cleaned the house, she set the tables. Patricia came. Dinner was then. Was fine. Patricia was fine, present, the follow-up questions in full effect. But when Derek helped clear the table and went to the kitchen, Patricia sat next to me and said, in a tone that was calibrated to sound like helpfulness, "I hope you don't mind me saying, but Derek has mentioned that he sometimes feels like you're a little managing with your mom, like you make decisions without consulting him. I'm sure you don't mean to, but I thought you should know it lands." I looked at her for a moment. I said, "I appreciate you telling me that. I'll think about it." She smiled. The kind of smile that has arrived at exactly where it intended to go. Later that night I called my mother and told her what Patricia had said. My mother was quiet for a moment and then said, "I have never once heard Derek say anything like that to me." "Camille, I want you to pay attention to that woman." I paid attention. What I observed over the 18 months between that dinner and my mother's stroke was a systematic and patient process of separation. Patricia did not yell at Derek or demand ultimatums. She did not say, "Choose between your family and me." What she did was quieter and more effective than any ultimatum. She planted seeds. She named concerns. She aimed every family obligation as a stress, every visit as an imposition, every phone call from our mother as a demand on Derek's time and energy. She framed me, specifically, as the problem. "Camille is too involved. Camille makes all the decisions. Your mother calls Camille for everything, not you. Doesn't that bother you?" I think Camille has made herself indisciplinable, and that's not actually healthy for your mom or for you. I know she said these things because Derek eventually said them to me, not as his own opinions initially, as things Patricia had observed and shared with him, things he was passing along because he thought I should hear them. But ideas, when they are repeated often enough in private by the person who shares your bed, become convictions. What Patricia thought became what thought. And what Derek thought became the justification for what Derek did. My mother's stroke was what neurologists classify as a moderate ischemic stroke. A blood clot in a vessel in the left hemisphere that caused, in the immediate aftermath, significant confusion, speech difficulty, and weakness on her right side. The doctors were cautious in their early assessments. The first 72 hours were critical. After that, the picture would be clearer. I called from the emergency waiting room at 11:40 p.m. on the Tuesday she came in. He answered immediately. I told him what had happened, what I knew, what I didn't know. He said, "I'm on my way." He was there by 1 in the morning. He looked scared and tired and like the Derek I had grown up. My brother isn't. Showing up the way you show up when the thing that is happening is real. We sat together until 4 a.m. when the night nurse told us we should go home and come back in the morning, that our mother was stable and resting, and the most useful thing we could do was sleep. Derek went back to Marietta. I went back to Inman Park. We texted each other at 7 a.m. when we both woke up and agreed to meet at the hospital at 9. I was there at 9. Derek was not. He texted at 9:20. Running a little late, Patricia wasn't feeling well this morning. I'll be there by 10:30. I texted back. Okay. Mom is awake. She's asking for you. He was not there by 10:30. He texted at 10:45. Things are taking longer than I thought. I'll try to get there this afternoon. He was not there that afternoon. He texted at 4 p.m. Today got complicated. I'll definitely be there tomorrow. How is she doing? I put my phone down and I looked at the door of my mother's room, which was slightly ajar, and I could see her in the bed. And she was looking toward the door with the expression that I was learning to recognize, the particular quality of waiting for someone who has not yet arrived. I went back into her room. She said my name. She was having difficulty with complex sentences at this point, but names she could manage, and mine was clean and clear. I sat in the chair beside her bed, and I held her hand, and she said, "Derek?" I said, "He'll be here tomorrow, Mom. He had some things come up today. He's coming tomorrow." She said it the way you say okay. I drove home at 9 p.m., showered, slept 4 hours. Derek texted in the morning, "How is she? I'm going to try to come this afternoon." He did not come that afternoon. On day 3 I called him instead of texting. He answered, "Derek, Mom is asking for you every day. The doctors say the next week is really important for her emotional recovery as well as her physical recovery. Familiar face, familiar voices, consistent presence. I need you." He said, "I know. Things have just been really complicated at home." I said, "What's complicated at home?" Pause. The specific kind of pause that means a person is editing. He said, "Patricia's been dealing with some things and she needs me here right now." I said, "Derek, our mother had a stroke. What is Patricia dealing with that takes priority over that?" He said, "You don't to be like that, Camille." I said, "Like what?" He said, "Patricia said you'd make this into a thing between her and the family. I'm just trying to balance." I said, "I am not making this into anything. Our mother is in the hospital. She had a stroke. She is asking for you. She asked for you yesterday. She asked for you today. I have been telling her you're coming. Please come. I'll try this week. I want to take you into those 11 days with me. Not because I need your sympathy, though I won't pretend that sympathy is unwelcome, but because I think it matters to understand what it actually means to sit alone in a hospital corridor for 11 days while your brother decides not to come. Not what it means abstractly, what it means in the specific, accumulated, ordinary detail of it. I am a social worker. I counsel families in crisis. I know, professionally and thoroughly, that caregiving is a physical and emotional labor with real costs and real limits, and that the people who perform it out's support are at significant risk for burnout, depression, and what the clinical literature calls compassion fatigue. I know all of this. I teach some of it. I have sat across from family members who were depleted and helped them name what they were carrying. None of that knowledge makes you less tired at 2 a.m. in a hospital corridor. Knowledge does not equal inoculation. Day 1, the first full day, I arrived at 8 a.m. and left at 9:30 p.m., 13 and a half hours. My mother was more confused in the morning than the afternoon, which the neurologist told me was normal in the early days of stroke recovery. The brain recalibrates as the swelling reduces, and the periods of clarity grow longer over time. In the morning, she didn't always know where she was. In the afternoon, she was mostly herself, tired and slightly slowed, but present. She asked for Derek twice in the afternoon. I said, "He's coming soon, Mom. He had some work things today." She said, "Is he okay?" She was in the hospital recovering from a stroke, and she was asking if her son was okay. This is what mothers do. I told her he was fine. I told her he would be there soon. Day 2, I arrived at 8:15. The morning nurse, a woman named Denise, who had been on the ICU floor for 11 years and had the specific combination of clinical precision and human warmth that the best nurses develop, asked me how I was doing. Not my mother, me. She had seen me there the previous day. She noticed I was alone. I said I was fine. Nurse Denise said, "Do you have family coming today? Support is really important, not just for your mother, for you too." I said my brother was planning to come. She nodded with the expression of someone who had heard this particular sentence many times. He did not come. Day 3. My mother had a hard morning. She woke confused and distressed and called for my father, who had been dead for 12 years. And it took 40 minutes and 2 nurses and a level of focused calm that I had to manufacture from very little available resource to bring her back to the present. By noon she was calmer. By afternoon she was clear enough to eat lunch sitting up and hold a brief conversation. She said, "Derek called." I said, "Talked to him this morning. He's dealing with some things at home, but he's going to come as soon as he can." She said, "Busy." The way you say something when you're making space for someone. I said, "He loves you, Mom," she said. "I know." And looked at the window. I sat in the corridor after my mother fell asleep and I called Derek. He didn't answer. I texted, "She asked for you again. Please call her, even if you can't come in person. Just call." He texted back 40 minutes later, "I will. Things are really hard right now, Cam. I appreciate your patience." My mother had a stroke. She was alone in a hospital room without her son. I had been at her bedside for 3 days, and he was in whatever house in Marietta, expressing appreciation for my patience. On day 4, I stopped expecting Derek to come. This is not the same as giving up on him. It is the professional assessment a person makes when they have enough data to the conclusion. I had called him 4 times. He had answered once. I had texted him 6 times. He had responded to 3. The response pattern was consistent. No inflection, appreciation for my patience, no commitment to action. I know this pattern. I see it in my work. It is the pattern of a person who has been convinced that someone else's crisis is not their responsibility. I called my mother's doctor on day 4 and had a frank conversation about what we were dealing with and what the realistic trajectory looked like. I contacted her health insurance about coverage for rehabilitation after discharge. I spoke with the hospital social worker, one of my colleagues from a different department, about resources and next steps. I had my mother's emergency contacts in the hospital system to reflect current information. I did what needed to be done. None of this is remarkable. I want to say that plainly. Doing what needed to be done is not a heroic act. It is simply what you do when someone you love needs it, and you are the person who is present. I am not asking for credit for showing up. I am naming Derek's absence because his absence was a choice, and choices have consequences, and I want to be very clear about the sequence of events. Day 5. My mother had her first real breakthrough day. She walked to the window with the physical therapist and looked out at the parking lot below. This was scope of her recovery. an enormous moment, and she was tearful and proud, and she called me to the window and pointed out a red cardinal on a pine branch in the small park across the street. She said, "Your other alwed cardinals were," and she couldn't finish the sentence. The word she needed was just out of reach, but I knew what she was trying to say. My father had always said that cardinals were the birds that carried messages from people who had moved on. She saw the cardinal and she thought of him. I took a photo and texted it to Derek with the caption, "She walked to the window today. Progress." I attached a note about what the doctor had said, that the trajectory was positive, that she would likely need 4 to 6 weeks of inpatient rehabilitation, but that her prognosis was genuinely good. Derek texted back, "That's great news. Tell her I'm thinking of her. Tell her I'm thinking of her." A message to relay, not a call to make himself. A message to deliver through me, the intermediary. Be calling apparently required something he was not prepared to spend. On day 6 I had a conversation with Nurse Denise at the end of her shift. She asked again how I was doing. This time I did not say I was fine. I said my brother isn't coming. She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "I've been on this floor for 11 years. You would not believe how many times I've seen that." She said it with a specific, practiced compassion, the kind that names the thing without dwelling in it, the way professionals learn to witness pain without being destroyed by it. I said, "She keeps asking for him." She said, "I know. I've heard her." We stood there for a moment in the corridor. Then she said, "You're doing right by her. Keep doing right by her. The rest, that's his to carry." I thought about that for the next 5 days. Day 7, called. Not to ask about our mother, not to say he was coming. He called because Patricia had apparently had a conversation with him about my behavior, which she had characterized through some alchemy of perception and narrative that I can only marvel at as an attempt to make Derek feel guilty and excluded from the situation. She had told him that I was managing everything and making decisions without him and freezing him out of the medical conversations. This was, in the strict factual sense, not true. I had texted him every medical update the moment I received it. I had forwarded him the doctor's notes. I had left him a voicemail after every significant conversation. He said, "Camille, Patricia is really upset. She says you haven't been keeping her in the loop and that she feels like..." I said, "Derek, stop. I am going to once, clearly. I have been at this hospital every day for 7 days. Our mother has been asking for you every single day. If you want to know what is happening medically, I have sent you every single update in real time. I am not managing you out. You are not here. Those are different things." Silence. Then he said, "I hear you. Things are really complicated right now. I want to tell you about days 8 through 11, because I think they are the part of this story that is hardest to describe and most important to understand." Days 8 through 11 were not dramatic. There were no further calls from Derek, no confrontations, no escalating arguments. The silence complete. He sent one text. "Thinking of you both. Update me when you can." I updated him. He did not respond. What those days were was exhausting and quiet and full of my mother and full of the specific person back to themselves. Her speech was improving. The right side weakness was responding to therapy. By day 9 she was eating independently, and by day 10 she was annoyed by the hospital food, which her doctor and I both took as an excellent sign. She was Beverly Foster again, opinionated and warm and specific, and watching her come back to herself was the best thing I experienced in those 11 days. She asked for Derek on days 8 and 9. On day 10 she did not ask. On day 11, the morning she was discharged to the rehabilitation facility, she asked me, with the directness that was returning to her as her speech improved. "Derek isn't coming, is he?" I had been lying to her for 10 days. I said, "He's been dealing with some things at home, Mom, but he loves you and he's going to see you as soon as he can." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "You don't have to protect me, Camille." She said it quietly and clearly, and with the particular dignity of a woman who has decided to see what is in front of her. I said, "I know," she said. "Is Patricia the reason?" I did not answer immediately. My mother looked at me with the expression that had always meant, "I can handle what you're about to say." I said, "I think so, yes." She nodded. She looked at the window. She said, "I thought so." And then she said, "I'm going to need you to not let this make you hate your brother, Camille. He is going to have to live with this. He doesn't need you to add to it. This is my mother. 63 years old, 11 days post-stroke, being discharged to a rehabilitation facility where she would spend the next 6 weeks relearning how to use her right hand and reconstruct the sense structures that the stroke had scrambled. And she was asking me not to hate my brother on her behalf. I said, "I'm not going to him, Mom." She said, "Good. Because I need you both, just not right now. Right now I need you." I transferred her to the rehabilitation facility that Thursday afternoon. I met with the intake team and went through her medical history and her medications and her preferences and her emergency contacts. I set up her room with the things she had asked me to bring from home: a photograph of my father, a crossword puzzle book, her reading glasses, the small quilted blanket her mother had made. I sat with her until she was settled. When I left, I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes and I let myself feel, for the first time in 11 days, what I had been containing. Not the performance of grief, not the managed professional containment. The actual feeling, the weight of 11 days of 12-hour shifts in a hospital corridor, of lying to my mother, of covering for a brother who had been in Marietta 40 minutes away the whole time. The weight of doing what needed to be done because someone had to. And underneath the exhaustion, something cleaner and harder. My mother spent 6 weeks in inpatient rehabilitation and was discharged home to Decatur in late March. She came back with an outpatient therapy schedule, a set of home exercises, a cane she used for balance, and the specific determination of a woman who had been told that her brain had been damaged and had decided to disagree. She made real progress. By the end of April, she was walking without the cane in the house. By May, she was walking in the neighborhood again, shorter distances than before, with me beside her. The crossword puzzles were slower, but she was doing them. The Wednesday calls resumed. She called me on a Wednesday in April, just to say that Wednesday was still the loneliest day of the week, and she was glad I answered. I was at her house 2 or 3 times a week. Her neighbor Gloria, who had known her for 20 years, brought meals twice a week. Her church sent volunteers for yard work and grocery runs. The community around her was remarkable, and I was grateful for it. Derek came to see her once in the 6 weeks of rehabilitation on a Sunday in early March for about 2 hours. Patricia did not come. My mother was gracious with him. She was Beverly Foster, and Beverly Foster did not make her children feel worse about the things they had already done wrong. She fed him. She showed him how well she was doing. She said she was glad he came. After he left, she called me. She said, "He looks tired." I said, "He's okay, Mom, I hope so." A pause. Then, "Thank you, Camille, for all of it." "You don't have to thank me," she said. "I know I don't have to. I want to." Dared to her house twice in April. He called more regularly than he had before. Not every Wednesday, but sometimes. My mother told me, in a Sunday call in late April, that she thought Derek was finding his way back. She said it with the patience and love of a mother who was not going to her child to explain the months he had been absent before she let him return. I respected her for that. I also want to be honest, I had not arrived at that same level of grace. I was watching Derek re-enter our mother's life with the careful, analytical attention the preceding 11 weeks had trained into me. I was watching and I was waiting, not for an apology, not specifically, but for a sign that he understood what had happened, that he knew, that some part of him had reckoned with the fact that his mother had asked for him every day for 11 days, and he had not come. That sign did not come. What came instead, 5 weeks after my mother came home, was a text forwarded from Marcus Webb. Marcus sent me 7 screenshots. I want to be careful about how I describe these, because I am aware that private text messages between a husband and wife carry a context, the shorthand, the emotional register, the specific tone of a private conversation that is different from the same words said in public. I am aware of this. I am not going to pretend that everything in those screenshots with full deliberate malice, or that people in private conversations always mean precisely what they type. But I am also going to tell you what was in them, because the content matters, and because eventually was going to have to account for it. In the messages sent during the first week of my mother's hospitalization, Derek described the situation using a phrase that I want to give you exactly. Camille has made this her project. She's doing what Camille does, taking over. Mom is fine. It's not like it's an emergency anymore. My mother was in the ICU. She had a brain bleed. The doctors had described the first 72 hours as critical. Derek had told his wife this was not an emergency. In another message, sent on day 4, Patricia, I don't want to be there because Camille has decided that's what we're supposed to do. This is Camille's thing. She needs to be the one in charge. Let her be in charge. My mother had asked for him 3 times in 4 days. Camille's thing. In a message sent on day 7, the day he called me to talk about Patricia being upset. She acts like I'm the bad guy for not being there every day. But Mom is getting better. The doctors say she's fine. Camille is there. I don't need to go sit in a hospital to prove I love my mother. Patricia, I chose you and I always choose you. Don't let Camille make you feel like you're the reason I'm not there. There were 4 more messages of similar character. Each one reframing absence as autonomy. Each one casting my presence at my mother's bedside as aggression rather than love. Each one positioning Patricia as the victim of a situation that my mother's stroke had created. I read those 7 screens twice. Then I put my phone down and I sat at my kitchen table in Inman Park, and I thought my mother saying Derek from her hospital bed on day 1. I thought about Nurse Denise asking if I had family coming and nodding with the expression of someone who had heard that answer before. I thought about 10 days of lying and 1 day of honest answer, and my mother saying, I thought so. I thought about what it means to have a brother who will look at a text from his wife and write back, I chose you and I always choose you. I will come and see my mother. Not this hard, but she needs me. Simply, I chose you. As if it were a binary, as if loving your wife required the active abandonment of mother. I thought about Patricia saying, at that dinner 2.5 years ago, I thought you should know how it lands. Thought you knew exactly how it would land. My mother's backyard on a warm May afternoon is a specific kind of beautiful. She has a wisteria that grows along the back fence that blooms every spring and that my father planted the year they moved in. And when it is in, fills the yard with a smell that is the smell of every good spring of my childhood. The neighbors were there. Her church friends were there. My uncle from my father's side had driven down from Chattanooga. My cousin Marcus, no relation to Derek's colleague, was there with his wife and their 2 kids running in the yard. Derek arrived with Tricia at 2 p.m. Patricia was wearing a sundress and carrying a fruit tray, and she greeted everyone with a full social warmth that she reserved for public occasions. She hugged my mother. She commented on how well Beverly looked, how remarkable her recovery was, how inspiring. I watched all of this from across the yard. I ate my food. I spoke to my uncle and my cousin and my mother's neighbors. I was patient. At 4 p.m., when the gathering had settled into the comfortable, meandering quality of a good afternoon, people in chairs, children in the yard, the conversations loose and easy, I walked over to where Derek was standing with my uncle near the grill. Patricia was across the yard talking to 2 of my mother's church friends, said Derek. I need to show you something. He looked at me with the expression of a man who has been expecting a conversation he hoped would not come. He said, "Can it wait?" I said no. I said it without drama, without performance. Simply, no. My uncle, reading the room with the perception of a man who had known our family for 30 years, quietly relocated himself to a chair near the wisteria. I handed Derek my phone with the 7 screenshots and I said, "Read these." He looked at the screen. He looked at the first screenshot. I watched his face. He knew what they were immediately. "Where did you get these?" I said them. He scrolled through them. He read them the way you read something when you are also simultaneously trying to figure out how to respond to it. Quickly and defensively, not fully absorbing but noting. When he reached the last one, he put the phone down slightly. He said, "Camille, those are private." I said, "I know of it. I'm not reading them in front of the whole yard. I'm showing them to you specifically. I want you to look at what you wrote. I want you to read what you called our mother while she was in the ICU. I want you to read what you wrote about me. And then I want you to tell me, honestly, whether you think I deserve that." He looked at the yard. He looked at Patricia across the yard, who had not yet noticed us. He said, "I said things I shouldn't have." Derek and I stood by the grill for another 20 minutes. He did not defend himself in any sustained or coherent way, which I took as a sign that some part of him had already convicted himself. He said, "I know I wasn't there. I know that." I said, "Tell me why." He was quiet for a moment. Then, she made it feel like if I went, I was choosing Camille and the drama over our marriage. She made it feel like going meant agreeing with the narrative that she was the reason for family problems. And I took the path that was easier in my house. I know. I understand why. What I need you to understand. He nodded. I said, "She asked for you every day. She asked if you were okay while she was in the ICU. She asked if you were okay, Derek." He looked at the grass. He said, "I know." He said it the way a person says something when they have no defense and have trying to find one. Then he said, Does she know?" I said, "She knows you didn't come. She doesn't know about the texts. I'm not going to tell her about the texts. She told me not to let this make me hate you. I'm working on that." He looked at me. A long look, the look of brother and a sister who have known each other for 36 years and have just arrived at the edge of something that could go either way. "I'm going to do better. I mean that." I said, "I know you mean it. Meaning it isn't enough. You have to actually do it." He said, "I know." Patricia came across the yard then, the fruit tray empty and her social warmth fully intact. She put her hand on Derek's arm and looked between us with the particular alertness of a person who has sensed something has happened and is determining how much she knows. My mother is doing well. She is back to walking her 3 miles most mornings. Shorter days when her balance is off. Full miles on the good days. She makes soup on Sundays. She calls on Wednesdays. The cardinal is back on the pine branch across from the rehabilitation facility, which she told me about in a call last month, with a kind of pleased wonder that made me understand she has found a new way to think about it. Derek comes to Decatur more regularly now. Not every week. We are not there yet, and I am not sure we will get there, and I have made peace with that uncertainty. More. He calls on Wednesdays sometimes. He came for her birthday in November, and brought her flowers she didn't expect, and stayed for dinner, and helped wash the dishes, and hugged her goodbye, with the specific grip of someone who has learned something about the cost of absence. Patricia I have a civil relationship with. I do not have a warm one. I do not expect to have a warm one. What I have is the clear-eyed, professional assessment of a woman who knows how to maintain functional relationships with people whose values are not her own, because life requires it. We speak. We are polite. My mother is between us in every interaction as a reason to behave with grace, and I behave with grace. What I keep from those 11 days, what I carry with me, not as a wound, but as a knowing, is what it feels like to be the person who stayed, to make the choice, every morning for 11 mornings, to go back to that hospital and sit in that corridor and lie about whether her son was coming, and then tell the truth, and watch her receive the truth with a dignity that humbled me. I am a social worker. I help families navigate crisis. I know what care looks like, and what abandonment looks like, and I know the difference between the two. I knew it before this. I know it more precisely now. And what I know most precisely is this: the people who show up during the hard parts are the ones who love you, not the ones who send fruit trays to the cookout afterward, the ones who sit in the corridor, the ones who lie to protect you, the ones who go back every morning. Mother knew that. She's always known that. I'm glad I do too. If you stayed until the end, thank you. Sincerely. This story is for everyone who has ever been the one who stayed. The one who sat in the corridor. The one who lied to protect someone from a truth they weren't strong enough to carry yet. The one who showed up because someone had to, and you were the person who was there. You are not the one who should apologize for being present. You are not too controlling. You are not managing everything. You are loving someone in the most practical and costly way love can be expressed, by showing up in the unglamorous, exhausting, everyday form of it, the kind that doesn't get photographed and posted and admired, the kind that just happens day after day because it has to. If you have a Derek in your family, someone who needed to be there and wasn't, I want you to know, his absence does not define your love. Your presence does. You did what you did because it was right. That is yours, and nobody can take it from you. Drop your city in the comments. Tell me if you've one in the corridor. I read every single one. Subscribe. Hit the bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. More stories coming. All of them about what we do when the people we love most are the ones who let us down. I'll see you next time.